Hello everybody and welcome to the birth of a new dimension. My name is Aurora. So each week, for many years I've been coming on the radio here and I've been speaking about how we are in this ongoing process of transformation, like caterpillar into butterfly level of transformation or metamorphosis. And we have finally made it through to that culminating point, like the baby has been born. And we've gone through a lot of difficulty, labor contractions, lots of pain, lots of a great sense of duress, a lot of difficulty. And now we're finally heading into that more expansive territory where we can finally begin to really live as opposed to just, be struggling and, be under great duress, which is what I would say we've been experiencing for maybe the past 16 years or so. Literally the entire amount of time that I've been here as Aurora. P.S. This is the first of my radio shows that you're listening to. I'm a galactic walk-in, so I'm not the original inhabitant of this body. I came in when this body was chronologically age 27, and of course I've gone through all of the levels of personal cultivation and individuation that everybody goes through, but most people go through it when they're age 1, 2, 3, or 4, and I went through it in chronological adulthood. So I'm a real person. My name is really Aurora. That's my real name. It's my legal name. And yes, and I'm ordinarily not anthropomorphic formed being. Ordinarily, I'm a big fat abstraction, like a bunch of polygons and colors and movement and, tones like music. So it's quite... Oh, there's a car going by outside. Sorry, it's a beautiful day. I got my window open here. Got my furry overlord here too. It's a beautiful opportunity to be here and to have the experience of being in a physical human body, having a face and 2 arms and 2 legs and having all the types of adventures one can have in that format. Yeah, so it has been a steep learning curve to learn about human socialization, like anthropomorphic social patterns, to understand language and subtext, and even just basic things like to be able to understand how best to care for the body, what foods are best in general. Hold on one sec. What foods are best in general, and then also what foods are non-polluted enough in this time and place to be able to eat. So that was all a steep learning curve also. And one of the reasons why I even bring that up, like it's not just in order to, speak about myself as an oddity, but it's really in order to give the provenance or the backstory of the shape that I call the flying rainbow lasagna. Because the flying rainbow lasagna is a shape that is created by the oscillation of genetic material in this body that has allowed my consciousness that is, interstellar or on a galactic level to come and occupy this human lovely container. And, when I talk about our organic, beautiful biological bodies, I'm not necessarily talking about being some kind of a sex symbol or something like that. I'm talking about our cellular structure is beautiful. Being an alive being is beautiful. So whatever anyone might feel about the outward appearance of themselves in terms of, like cultural beauty standards, that's not what I'm referring to. I'm saying that our metabolism is beautiful, being able to, if you get a cut on your finger and heal it with life force energy, that is beautiful. The way that our cells metabolize and the way that they are arranged in our body, all of that to me is incredibly beautiful. And then I also think that people are beautiful in the way that their appearance shines forth too. But I'm talking about how wonderful it is to have this experience, and I contrast that with a lot of people who are natives. It's just like if you lived in a small town and you're like, I hate it here, I've lived here my whole life, and then someone new moves in and they're like, this place is fantastic, you have beautiful trees here and a beautiful peaceful little creek and a park, and then, so it's like that person really appreciates it. That's me as the walk-in saying, hey, I really love being in a body, it's really cool to be here. Something, I love walking around my neighborhood. I love, literally, we have beautiful roses here. I love smelling the flowers as I walk around my beautiful neighborhood and looking at, it's like the miracle of photosynthesis. And then there are a lot of people who have been here their whole existence, their whole lives naturally, and they not even take this place and these experiences for granted, but even maybe feel a little bit resentful, like, oh, it's so joyful. Maybe they feel it's so burdensome to have a body and to have to eat and to have to brush your teeth and to have to go to the toilet. But that's, I think a very, it's not the attitude that I share. And it's kind of like overlooking all of the wonderful aspects of being here in like, yeah, just because there's housekeeping, there are chores definitely to take care of, but there's also so many wonderful opportunities. So the whole point is the flying rainbow lasagna shape is the dynamic end result of a genetic oscillation, a new song, a new dance that is able to be played with the instrument, quote unquote, of a human body. And I'm not the only person that, has access to this. Literally, this is one of those laws of the cosmos. Once a thought has been thought or created or conceived of, it is available to anyone to use that thought. It's not just a proprietary thing for one person. So I thought a new thought, like what happens if you vibrate the strings of DNA like this? And then I did it with the body. But I'm not the only person that ever gets to do this. It's just like saying if you wrote a song like Stairway to Heaven, you can keep it a secret if you want to, but even still, that song is, at large. It is like a thought that has been born, and it is now at large in the cosmos. So even, with or without your permission, someone else might think that thought and might play that song. So I am definitely not proprietary about the song called The Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Far from it. I would like to get credit as the person who wrote it like this. I'd like to be known as the songwriter. However, my true dream is for each person to take that song and to make it their own. They can, they can play it exactly the way that I wrote it. That's fine. That's like very fitting and good, but even better because each person's genetic code is completely unique, and each person's life experience and trajectory is unique. It's better when you do a cover of a song. That's like you can do a country western flavored song or a hip hop flavored song or whatever is your jazzy style. You add your flavor to it, and that is what I really truly want to experience and see happening. And the reason for that, this even goes beyond like some kind of like goodness or altruism, even though I do have those characteristics too. It's about creating the strongest possible system in terms of creativity and sharing consciousness and sharing ideas. And if we look at this like a great brain, the whole hierarchy is more powerful and more stable when there's not just one little point that is the point that can make new ideas or conceive of new things or make magical new things happen. It's a much stronger formation or hierarchy when it's not a pyramid-shaped hierarchy with one person at the pinnacle, the way that humanity has been taught to have one king at the top of the social pyramid. It's much stronger when it's a lateral hierarchy. So imagine a jazz band, where all of the different musicians have the capacity to write music. And it's not just the person who wrote the song and then everybody else has to follow what's already been written. The drummer can innovate new beats and the bassist can innovate new, rhythms, and everybody can innovate new ways. And the reason for that is every day is different. Every day the variables are different. And that this also goes to overwhelming the AI or logic-based or machine-based consciousness. Brief pause. So yeah, humanity, bad news. We've been oppressed for a very long time. We've undergone a genetic squashing that pretty much made us into domesticated animals as opposed to, free, wild, undomesticated phenomena. And we as earthly humans have had to develop earth technology, terrestrial technology, in order to compensate for this lack of natural capacity. Like our telepathy that was diminished, and if we really returned to our true nature, which is to be light eaters who do not need intermediaries in order to, receive energy, nourishment, information from the sun and the stellar network, we would all have our own microclimate around us. That means like you don't need a house to keep you warm or keep you cool. You have your own little microclimate around you. You can easily levitate if you want to. You don't need a helicopter to fly you someplace. The idea of that is ridiculous. Or whatever, you can hold your breath forever underwater, or you can do things that would be considered and defined as superhuman. They are really our birthright. Or we could all say that we are all latent super people, supermen and superwomen, and that we are in this moment now of finally regaining access to, or gaining as if for the first time access to, these super quote unquote abilities that are really the foundation part of who we are. Because we all had these abilities in the time that is known as a mythological time. In this culture, the mythological time of Atlantis, or the time of the immortals. And literally that was when our genetic code was not degraded, death was not experienced. There was simply incarnation into life while still being connected to the network of consciousness known as the stellar network, experiences while incarnated in the flesh, but not disease, not suffering, not decrepitude, and then eventually, let's call it reintegration with pure abstraction. And abstraction, it doesn't mean flavorless pablum. This is not like joining the Borg where you become a robot and let go of your individuality. It's not like that at all. You maintain your individuality, your sense of self, some of your real flavors and characteristics, but you don't carry a lot of emotional baggage. And that if you identify with your suffering and you say, I am this suffering, I am this emotional baggage, then you can't get through those tiny wormholes. You can't make it on that journey. So really what we're experiencing now at this level of our experience, or up until this point, after the squashing but before this flying rainbow lasagna liberation, everybody's been in a process of refinement. Even the planet on a larger scale. But we've been refining the characteristics, refining out the characteristics that are the baggage, that's not who we really are, and aligning ourselves coherently, like a coherent beam of laser light, with the interior, true core values that we really are, and that's as an eternal being, not merely as a temporal ego. So that's what when I draw the time field, that's what I draw or paint. And it's been necessary for us to each, as an individual, kind of weed out from the personal garden of characteristics who you are not from who you truly are. And when I keep saying we're giving birth, it's birth of a new dimension, we're at that point now. So birth of a new dimension, this to me refers to, and I have a painting that I painted about this also, that final culmination when spirit and matter are no longer separated, and there's no longer this false distinction like objective materialism makes between the experiencer and the context that is being experienced. That really we understand that our minds directly affect and create matter, and that matter responds directly to our thought structure. So yeah, reality is very plastic in the sense of something being morphable or changeable, and our minds are these very powerful sculpting tools that we can use to sculpt the raw materials of reality. So also this has not always been available to us, because many people would cling to that old state, that old paradigm, old context that says, oh no, you're not actually a powerful mind creator, you're just a simple experiencer of the context, and you can't move matter with your mind, and you can't affect matter by thinking about it. So it's taken a very long journey to get to this point. And so some of the bars on the cage were conceptual in terms of what was taught, like the official story of how matter behaves. And some of it also had to do with where we were in the time field. Because just like there are seasons on Earth there's winter time when you can't plant a seed. You cannot grow your garden in the winter. It doesn't matter if your seeds are really beautiful and if your intention is really strong. You put the seed outside, it's not the right time. And also if you try to grow a seed on a piece of concrete as opposed to the fertile ground of, a garden, that seed cannot grow. So over the past however many thousands of years, many humans have tried to create matter with their minds and be empowered, and it wasn't the right season. This doesn't mean it can't happen. It means now you have to say, is it the right season? And the answer is yes. That's what I mean by we have given birth. We now are in this new area of the time field that is a very fertile area of the garden, and it's springtime. So now when you take a thought that is like a seed, and it contains all of the potential for life, the potential expansion into a whole experience, just like a seed can expand into a whole giant plant or a tree. And you plant that seed, or you throw it into the vibrating field of the force field of like space-time and consciousness, that seed actually grows now, actually germinates, it actually creates an experience. So each one of us necessarily has to refine our inner characteristics and drop the baggage, because you don't want to put all of that crap into your world seed. If you're identifying with your suffering and saying, that's who I am as a person, like all of these bad things that have happened to me, and that's who I am as a person, then that is what will go into a world seed and blossom forward and then make more fruits that will make more experiences that are just like that. As opposed to identifying with the true characteristics, the real tones, the real colors of who each person is, and not putting all of the false temporal, the stuff that happens just because you've been tumbling through time for so long. None of that should go into the seed or be written into the script for the next chapter of what is going to be experienced. The next chapter of what we're going to experience as individuals, as a planet, can be the most magical and what would some people would call utopian experience possible, because you can now create with your mind. If you can create with your mind, are you going to envision a world where children in impoverished nations have to eat off of a garbage heap in order to stay alive? I hope there wasn't too much noise out my window there, but yeah, no, I wouldn't use my mental energy to imagine a world where there's such extreme poverty that some children have to eat off of a garbage heap, and I wouldn't create a world where, there's sickness or death, and I wouldn't create a world where people are dehumanized. And part of the dehumanization, it's not just looking at someone as if they are, less than human. It is also the way that we've set up money earning and the way that we have given humans tasks to perform in order to earn that money. And a lot of things that people in this time and place just take as normal. That's just a skateboard going by outside. A lot of the things that people in this time and place take as normal, like what you just have to do and get a job in order to stay alive. None of that is normal. None of that should be taken as a matter of course. That is stuff that's like profoundly symptomatic of really, troubled, perturbed everything here, and that needs to be healed immediately. So yeah, now we are in this world where pure spirit, or that could also be replaced by energy, or that word could also be replaced by consciousness. Spirit, energy, consciousness, that is now not separate from matter. And that's a big, big, huge shift, because most people have been taught, hey, the world is what it is, whether you think what you think or not, or whatever you're trying to do with your mind, you're not controlling the world. And then there are some very simplistic and, undesirable thought constructs like this, Abraham Hicks vortex or some of these other things. I'm not trying to be mean, but no, that's really the law of attraction, the secret. It's hugely simplistic. It's dumbing it down to a dangerous level, and it doesn't recognize all the subtleties of what actually goes into reality creation. So to create reality, and if you're going to start creating reality, please be responsible. What are your values? If I've just given you this, like Green Lantern's ring of imagination, where you can imagine anything you possibly want to, and you're going to imagine you're going to go on a luxury vacation cruise, that's not responsible. Will you please use your ring of imagination to imagine that children don't have to eat off of a garbage heap in order to stay alive? That's what I really want to see. I want to, all humans here to get that magical, quote unquote, ring of imagination so that they can use their reality creation powers. And I also want their values to be, and their priorities to be in alignment with the divine. Because then it's like we're really in partnership. So that's the big part of this refinement process, that people have been having to refine themselves up to this point of being worthy and responsible of getting the imagination ring, being able to create with the mind, so that you're creating from the right direction, not creating out of, serving yourself or out of fear or out of egotism. And that's what I also call being a good musician. You're working with the symphony of life. You also have to consider this. Hey, how is my music affecting the rest of the biosphere? If I'm going to do this, this, and this over here, what does it mean to the microbes? What does it mean to the dragonflies? What does it mean to the redwood trees? And if I'm doing this, this, and this over here, what does it mean to all the rest of the humans? And if I'm doing this, this, and this over here, what does it mean to the entire planet? And then, hey, what's our planet doing? If our planet is doing this, this, and this over here, how is that affecting the rest of our solar system and our sun and everything like that? It begins, once you begin to recognize how interconnected all life and all consciousness is, you then have to take responsibility for the impact that you as an individual are having on the rest of life and consciousness. So this is what I mean when I say that reaching those higher levels of consciousness, you do not become, like pablum, like something that is boring or totally, it's not conformity land. It is not, but it is mutual respect land, where it's like, oh, if that being acts like that and I'm acting like this, like we got to find a way to make sure that everybody's got a gig, everybody's got what they need, everybody's got the capacity. That's what freedom is, actually. So part of my basic value system of where I come from on an intergalactic level is freedom. And freedom does not mean that some select beings are free to oppress others. Like, I'm free to rape and murder you. That's me expressing my free will. No, no, no. That is a total aberration of that idea, because then you're taking away the free will of all the people that you've raped and murdered. So that's clearly not freedom. So freedom has to do with, it's kind of like puzzle solving. Finding a way to arrange reality and solve this puzzle of reality so that everything is in its proper context or proper environment, so that everything has what it needs, right? So that's a pretty, it's a tall order, and it requires huge organizational skills. And also it takes a bit of time. And this is what we've been doing. So also, if you feel levels of frustration, like tapping your foot, where are the angels? Like, what is going on? Why all the suffering? Why are the children still being born with brain cancer? It's because it's a lot of house cleaning. It's a lot of reorganization. It's a lot of fixing that has to go on, and it's been going on. And now is that moment where it's like, it's gone on enough for really profound, like I said, metamorphosis, change on a profound level to happen. And so what I mean in terms of that is the human body and the functioning of the human body changing on a profound level. So there are definitely people who are on Earth right now who have cultivated their consciousness and cultivated their body, their physicality, and cultivated their relationship to the time field to the point where they are prepared for this metamorphosis. And it has to do with a transformation of the experience of time. Becoming multidimensional means that you begin to perceive all of the different possibilities that, radiate forward in what we would call the future, and that also fan outwards into the past, and how what you do in the moment now ripples in both directions. It affects the future and it affects the past. That's what it really is to be a good musician. The symphony is not just what's going on in this moment right now, it's even what has happened leading up to this moment, and how our actions will affect others in the future, and those others in the future are technically ourselves, because all this life and all this consciousness is connected. So, many people have spoken about how they find the year 2017 to be increasingly surreal or increasingly unlikely. Everything from the, election of President Trump to some of the world events that we're seeing. And it absolutely is an outer expression of the inner consciousness revolution that is ongoing and that is now reaching, we could call it like a critical momentum. That, a year ago, if I had spoken openly about the deep state, people would have said Aurora is a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist. And now it is openly spoken about by, what are accepted, commentators and intellectuals of this society, of this time and place, who are not considered fringe dwellers. And President Trump even acknowledged it, in writing himself. So this is something that once was occult or hidden, or something that only select conspiracy theorists believed in, and now has just become accepted as a matter of fact, like the sky is blue. I don't have to write a lot of news articles telling everyone the sky is blue. We all perceive this. So in 1 year, what has happened is something that used to be a mere crazy theory has now been accepted on, interior levels by just about everyone that is here in existence. And so this is the real trajectory of information. It arises internally. So there is a great broadcast, and that broadcast is coming in genetically. And our DNA is a transceiver, a transmitter and a receiver of thoughts and ideas and energy and consciousness. So we are all receiving information, whether or not you read the news or whether or not you listen to the radio, people are receiving information. And this is what I mean when I say once a thought has been incepted and once it's been created by consciousness, anybody thinking anywhere has access to that thought. It's not just for the original thinker. So this is what this ongoing struggle or war. I don't like to call it a battle because I try not to weaponize this transformation with the language of war, but it's a battle in the sense of spiritual war, that there are aspects of consciousness that do not want to encourage, progress or refinement or cultivation, and there are aspects of consciousness that want to move towards organization and greater levels of intelligence and greater levels of perception. And it seems as if these two aspects of consciousness are locked in dualistic opposition. However, Flying Rainbow Lasagna, the profundity of this shape is that it shows the visual end result of non-duality, how both energy and entropy are both unity consciousness. So the beings that are here that are moving towards greater states of disorganization, they're going towards entropy. They're losing energy, losing intelligence, losing divine life force energy, becoming less and less aware. And that's what they're supposed to do. And they're supposed to become totally cold, dead, non-moving, no molecular movement, frozen entropic beings. And then there are beings who are supposed to have all the energy, and they're supposed to be circulating around the time field doing stuff. And this whole refinement process is which characteristics go to entropy, which characteristics get to be energized. So the energized characteristics, these are the ones that are based in eternity, like eternal characteristics. They're based in unconditional love. And I'll just clarify again, if this is the first time you've ever heard me speak, when I say unconditional love, I am not talking about romantic love, and I'm also not talking about it as a sense of a romantic, a utopian ideal, something that can't be embodied, something that's only for special people. Unconditional love is literally our baseline state. Like when we come here as little infants, we come in a state of complete unconditional love. And P.S., that's why it feels good to hug a little baby. Have you ever, I don't know if you've ever babysat, like I have some friends, and right after their babies were born, I was lucky enough to kind of be an aunt and, look after a little tiny wrapped up burrito, tiny little infant. And it's wonderful to hug and cuddle them and rock them in the chair and take good care of them. They feel wonderful because they're still part of that very divine level of consciousness. They haven't necessarily gotten their ego formed. They haven't necessarily put up a wall or an exterior boundary that says, I'm me and you're you, and you're different than me, and like the individuation that happens here necessarily. There's a healthy way to create that sense of individuation that doesn't have to do with some of the unhealthy aspects of growing an ego. So it's good to individuate and it's good to have an ego, but then it's also good to remain connected to the sense of the totality. And that's what we were always intended to do. We were always intended to come here and have physical bodies and be an individual, like be an individual in the band. So yeah, you're playing the cello, that guy's playing the guitar. They're not the same instrument, you're individual. However, you still understand that you're a part of the music. You originate from the same place as all the other musicians. You're all working together to continue that music. You're all going to join up together at the end of the song and, kind of coalesce back into what you came from. That's the real, like, if people in this time and place really knew and embodied that, like the social experience here would be really different. I'd laugh and I'd joke because I'm shocked and horrified by the barbarian values of this time and place. And it's true, like the barbarian values, it has a lot to do with people, doing what is right for themselves, and the idea that only the strong will survive and everyone's in competition fighting against each other. And like that's no way to run a band. That's no way to run a symphony. It should not be like the cellists are fighting with the guitarists and, they're like whacking each other over the head with the cello bow and see like, no, I want to play louder. I want to play louder. That is not what it's supposed to be like. And yet that is what we've seen in pretty much all of recorded human history. And all of recorded human history is not all of human history. It's just what is recorded because we have had a mind wipe. About 10 or 15,000 years ago, we had what is known as the fall of consciousness, the fall from grace, the biblical fall of Atlantis. And since that time, humanity has been bootstrapping itself on up in terms of creating compensatory technology and trying to piece together the origin story of consciousness, the origin story of cosmogenesis. And humanity has not been alone during that time. The beings that caused the fall, the mental rapists, the genetic rapists that harmed everyone here, those beings have been pretty much impeding the cultivation of consciousness. And so, ancient technology, like the Great Pyramid at Giza, So I'm generally not a technologist. I'm definitely not a transhumanist. I definitely believe and promote the idea that we can do everything, accomplish everything we need to do without the physical insertion of technology, not anything inserted into our bodies, and even not needing anything to like amplify our natural tones of what we can do. And I'm not a demonic apologist at all or anything like that. However, I do believe that technology can be used in a conscious way that is harmonically integrated with the natural world. And so I've used the example of chloroplasts and DNA in some of my webinars speaking about that. And the Great Pyramid at Giza is another good example of technology that has been used for the purposes of raising and cultivating consciousness, and that is in harmonic integration with the natural world. So this, the Great Pyramid at Giza, this is ancient, and it is also does not originate, let's say, it was created with the assistance of non-terrestrial or exotic intelligences and technology. And the impact that it had was an amplification of consciousness raising energy in its locality. And that means not only was energy broadcast in a wireless sense to be able to like light a light bulb or make life more comfortable, energy was also broadcast in the sense that it amplified consciousness and made people more intelligent and made people more aware and more connected to these higher dimensional abstract levels of thought. It helped to jumpstart and continue the momentum of civilization. And I don't just mean civilization like ancient Sumeria, basically corralling humanity from its hunter-gatherer expansive format into a domesticated agricultural format and teaching it money. I'm not talking about that level of civilization. Like that's like domestication, but not in a good way, the way you domesticate a wolf into a dog. But I'm talking about civilization in the sense of refinement, making something more civil instead of having just a bunch of barbarians, with the barbarian value system, seeing who can hit someone else over the head with the cello and play louder. Instead of that, it broadcast a vibration that actually made humanity want to collaborate together. And that's what I mean by civilization, this collaboration. And in terms of like, no offense and everything, but Earth civilization, Earth culture, has a long way to go before it is ready to be civilized on a galactic level, like prepared to play music with the rest of the cosmos. And, the cosmos is not just this timeline, it's every timeline. So humanity right now, no offense, because I know some cool people who probably would be really, good and everything, good musicians, respectful of microbes and, respectful of all of the players in the symphony, not just the loudest ones. But there are a lot of people who are totally unprepared. They're like hugely egotistical. And when I say egotistical, it's just like they would only want to do something if they could be the center of it all, if they could be the divine God, if they could be the chosen one, if they could be in charge. They're not interested in being, a part of the whole symphony, and being like that attitude does not fit with the rest of the music. And that's also like the type of egotism that says, I, as a human, crawling with human and earth-centered microbes, am allowed to jump in a clank metal spaceship and fly to another planet and infect or infest that planet with all of my microbes, that I'm allowed to do that. Like, no, you're not allowed to do that. That's not right. So it's some people who are like very unrefined, and unfortunately the people who are unrefined at that level seem to be running the show, or have been running the show up until this point, in this time and place, in this culture. And that's not by accident. Like, yeah, the least qualified individuals are in the highest positions of power around here. And all of that is part of this, really screwed up distortion of the time field. And the time field is distorted by what I describe as satanic technology. And when I say satanic, I'm not talking about anything from the, Judeo-Christian Bible. I'm talking about actual space races, like actual, like various species of non-terrestrial life forms that require technology to be alive. And some of them are really, technological, like they have to be downloaded into a hard drive. Some of them are on that level. They don't even have bodies. But some of them are on the level of having bodies, but they cannot exist without the assistance of technology. So domesticated humans are similar, but not exactly similar. I mean, you need to have fire to stay warm and stay alive. But something, if I took away all of the human technology here, you could still have babies. you could still procreate and continue the species and continue onward, and you could find a way to, get food from the environment and, stay alive. It would be difficult, but you could do it. However, there are some space races that could not do that, and I liken them to English bulldogs, that those domesticated dogs on Earth right now have been genetically modified through selective breeding so much that their pelvis cannot give birth naturally, that those dogs, puppies, can only come out if you surgically remove them. And so that means you have to have the technology available to do that type of surgery. So there are some space races that can only be in existence like the bulldog puppies. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they contain technology or microchips or something like that, but it means that in order for them to even be alive or for them to be telepathic and be able to have an impact on the time field and talk to you or communicate with you from a distance, that those beings are necessarily having to use technology. And so if you're a bulldog and you want to have babies, you're like, wait, don't get rid of technology. I need that because my womb doesn't actually function correctly and I can't actually do this in the natural way. There's space races that are like that too. And they might even say, hey, we're the good guys. We're the good guys. We don't use technology except, this, and this about us relies upon technology. And that means that we don't actually want to get rid of all technology because we still need this, and this in order for our species to continue onward. So it's really necessary to be more sophisticated in terms of our estimation of various space races, because there is this kind of tendency here on Earth with the huge Stockholm syndrome that's been going on. Humanity got raped. And then humanity also has a tendency to worship its rapists as gods, because they programmed that in the huge genetic vulnerabilities. They programmed in that they're like the hackers that can now come in through back doors. And when they come in through back doors, they're like, I'm a god. Listen to me. You are a lowly human. And it's all programming. It's all very, very false. So some of those same beings that, like to come into humanity and they say, we're angels. We're really helpers. We're good. We're this, we're that. They're only like partially helpful because they don't really want to get rid of technology because they rely upon technology in order to continue their existence. And they would have to radically change their existence, just like humans would have to radically change their existence if we got rid of all technology here. Like, no, you're not going to drive your car anymore or fly your plane anymore. Now you're going to walk or you're going to do whatever, in the natural way. So just like that, those technology reliant space races would have to radically change what they're doing and what they're allowed to do based upon, only being natural. So the strongest and best extraterrestrials, the ones that are really good, the truly angelic realm, are beings who don't use freaking technology. They don't need it. It's like Tonka toys. It's like, that is not interesting. They are way more powerful than anything that requires Tonka toys. And that's what I'm connected to. So that's what Flying Rainbow Lasagna is. It's not a technology, or it's a technology in the sense that an idea or a concept can be a technology, but it is something that you can apply to your biology or to an energy field, or like a magnetic field like Earth's magnetosphere, or any toroidal energy field, something that's created by a Rodin coil, or what some people call a Tesla coil, or can be created using the time field, just the flow of time. So that's really different than a clank metal spaceship, and it takes some level of intelligence and sophistication to even be able to perceive the Flying Rainbow Lasagna and then understand its value. So I've been here for 16 years and I've been trying to tell all humanity about it for the whole time. When I first got into this body, I was not articulate. Like being on the radio like this and speaking with my mouth, I call it flapping my moving mouth parts. That is a miracle that I do this all the time, because when I first got here, it was incredibly difficult for me to express myself through words. So part of that was because of neurological damage, and it took a long time I call it rewiring, but now I know the word is neuroplasticity. So to be able to learn in a new way how to make my brain connect with my mouth and express myself through words, well, that was a long challenge. It took a couple of years, and during that time I did tons and tons of artwork, and I made lots of drawings, and they were like diagrams that I would show to people, and I would think like, this is really communicating the ideas that I have about Flying Rainbow Lasagna to them, and they would just be like that is a pretty picture. They would think like those are like flowers or something that you're drawing, and I'm like, they are not understanding what I'm trying to say to them. So then I started to have to be like, okay, I got to download this operating system. I got to download this app called Language. I got to, I didn't think of it in that way. I'm putting it into those terms now so that I can be able to effectively communicate with other people and share these ideas. Because it's one thing to have ideas inside of you and carry them around. It's like having an inner treasure or whatever. And then it's a totally different thing to be able to express them and share them with others and, give them to other people's minds. And the whole reason, as I said, I want to do that is because it becomes a stronger system when you have a lateral hierarchy and more variables. So the more people that learn about the flying rainbow lasagna and understand that they can rearrange the possibilities of their life, that they don't necessarily have to die. Hey, that's a big one. And I'm not trying to make fun of people that have a faith or are part of earth religion, but there's a lot of stuff in earth religion that is not logical. And part of this one that says you have to die in order to be immortal, like you're going to die, then you're going to be resurrected, then you're going to be immortal, that is not logical to me. It's like saying in order to stay on the road, first you have to crash into the guardrail and drive off a cliff, and then you get to drive down the middle of the road. Like, no. The way that you stay on the road is by staying on the road. The way that you are immortal is by not dying. And so again, I'm not making fun of religion. And in some of my videos, you might see me wearing the symbol of a cross on my necklace. And that's because the Christ consciousness is real. Like, even if the church is distorted or corrupt, like earth religion around here, it's not only like that ain't right, like they don't understand. It's not just like an innocent, misunderstanding. It's like malevolent, intentional distortion. And again, I'm not trying to make fun of anybody's religion, but all the things that have been co-opted or hijacked or hacked about God and divinity and Christ consciousness, like that is like to turn people off, to make them think that it's not real. God is very real. God is super real. And the idea of Christ, like a larger meta or overarching entity, a larger viewpoint that is made of the mosaic of many different individual shards of consciousness that are, our individuated viewpoints. That's also very real. And that's what I mean when I say you join this collective, but you don't lose your individuality. Each person has their own viewpoint. Each person has their own individual dance and their own individual energetic signature. It's supposed to be that way. It's not supposed to be conformity land. It's not supposed to be cookie cutter, like everyone is shaped the same and everyone's a robot who goes in the same direction. The real genius of freedom is recognizing and accepting all of the individuality of all of the different consciousness specimens and putting everything in its right place. It's like solving a puzzle. It's like solving the world's most big, complex, and juicy and fun Rubik's Cube. And it's like, okay, maybe if we put this over here and put this over here and put this over here, then we'll get everything fixed up. Because, hey, there are some organisms, like there's these radioactive spiders that live at the bottom of the ocean and they eat sulfur that comes off of, underground lava vents. That's a really specific context for that particular organism. So what we didn't have to do was change the entire surface of Earth in order to make it like a giant, magma lava field so that these one set of spiders could live there, because then you couldn't have fluffy bunnies. Where would the fluffy bunnies live? So what happened is we made different areas. There are different contexts. The radioactive spiders can live in the bottom of the ocean, and the fluffy bunnies can live in the green field, and everybody gets to be happy, and that's called true freedom. So what's going on Earth right now is a horrible insult to the idea of true freedom, because we also have a lot of people on Earth who are not able to expand their consciousness, go in the direction they want to go, do the dance with their DNA that they want to do. There's a lot of constraint, limitation. That's the antithesis of freedom, because if you actually were free, you would go where you really want to go. The underwater spiders want to go underwater and they want to live there. They're comfortable there. And what's going on Earth right now is there's a lot of consciousness that is constrained or stuck here. And it doesn't want to be here. It wants to circulate where it wants to go. That's solving the Rubik's Cube. So I speak also a lot about energy and entropy, that there are some levels of consciousness, some aspects of consciousness, and some characteristics that should go into entropy. that they get set free by being brought into a totally cold entropic state. And some forms of consciousness need to continue on their journey, like some of the beings that are stuck on the interstices, on that meniscus, that membrane between worlds. They're like supernatural residue, like a ghost or something that's been a residue of a person's life. That's the ego that should have been resolved a long time ago. And that's just like, there are some that are just, ordinary ghosts. They're just hanging around. Then there's some ghosts that exist because of profound trauma, like people have been murdered or raped, and that aspect of themselves is still hanging around because they didn't get to resolve that, the difficulty, the suffering of, how they were killed. And all of that needs to be resolved in terms of solving this big giant Rubik's Cube so that everything goes where it needs to go. The Flying Rainbow Lasagna is one of those tools that we can use to solve this Rubik's Cube. Because what it means is you're able to bend the fabric of space-time and consciousness and vibrate membranes as if they are porous. So if it used to be like, I'd love to move this particle A across this membrane over here into area B so that I could solve this puzzle and everything would be where it's supposed to be, but I can't because there's a big fat wall there. There's a membrane there. There's something that separates it. And that separation could be time. It can be like, I'd love to move this thing from the past into the future, but I can't because there's this big giant wall of time. That means that I'm not allowed to do that. But what if you can bend space-time and consciousness and jump over that wall of time? And then you can be like, I'm going to take those consciousnesses or particles from the past or whatever stuff I want to take from the past, and I'm going to connect it to this stuff that's technically in the future. And then what we're doing is reweaving the time field in order to create these benevolent harmonic patterns of consciousness that actually solves the puzzles. So that's what I do with the Flying Rainbow Lasagna every day. It's a physical dance that I do with my body, and it's also a non-physical dance that I do like in the sense of energy or vibrating my DNA. And it's also a consciousness dance because what I'm doing is envisioning or imagining or emanating with the movie projector of my mind the solutions to the big, giant, fucked up Rubik's Cube of life, pardon my French. That yes, I'm not just sitting in the Abraham Hicks vortex envisioning myself on a cruise, because something that is lame. That is super lame. Because you can be on a cruise, you can get your wish, be on a cruise, be sipping champagne on some kind of, like fiesta deck of the Love Boat. I'm trying to think of something silly. And there's still babies that are being born with brain cancer, and there's still children that are eating off of garbage heaps in impoverished nations, and there's still the vaccine agenda, and there's still chemtrails, and there's still all these other things. It hasn't solved anything. So what a silly waste of reality creation energy. It's like painting a painting of, a decorative vase of flowers instead of painting a painting of a banquet of food, which is what you really need. So in terms of reality creation, let us all focus our consciousness and what we can do with our minds and our imagination on real solutions. And when I say this world is a hellish realm, it's hellish because of the way that the energy here has been misappropriated. It has not been properly structured so that the energy, and energy can be physical energy like heat or electrons, but it can also be the consciousness energy of money or attention. That sometimes the money and attention in this time and place are being focused on completely the wrong things. And if they were just focused on the right things, this could be a heavenly realm. So it's basically like saying we've got enough energy, we've got enough money, we've got enough. We are abundant, but it's all being misappropriated and concentrated in the worst possible ways. It's totally out of balance, and it's not only not sustainable, but this is not the original divine plan. And this divine being, this divine larger entity, is not some far away, distant, uncaring, like asshole. It's a real, caring, living being that is intimately connected with our own struggles. That because we're supposed to be emitting consciousness or music on a particular level that's supposed to feed other beings. And if our music is degraded, then they don't get to be healthy and vital either. It affects everyone, and that affects the entire time field, with the entire, divine consciousness that we're a part of. So yeah, God is very real, and God is here in every single atom and every single cell of our body. So it's not even like God is from the outside looking and being like, oh no, I care about that person as if they're my child and they're about to, get in a car wreck and die. It's not like that. God is more like, hey, I'm
in this body that has, neurons and nuclei, and I'm about to die because we're going to drive off the road. It's like, that's a really different perspective. So God is very real. God is definitely here. And also, when people are like, yeah, like, where's the angels? Like, where's the this? Where's the real help? Because we got all these different malevolent space races that have certainly been sticking their big fat noses into our, into our minds, into our events around here. We're the good guys. It's like, where are the good guys? Because there's all I see are creeps and idiots and, losers. And the answer is the good guys are here, have been here for a very long time. It can be hard to perceive them because of the constant, distraction of language, the constant distraction of these, I almost look at them like gravity lenses that interpose themselves between you as an individual and the source of ideas and life force energy, like the sun or the stellar network or divinity. They're literal lenses or intermediaries that are trying to take energy and not let you see clearly. So a great deal of this also has to do with how to be free. Okay, let's get to how-tos. Those gravity lenses or distortion lenses, send them into entropy. Don't try to bring them into energy. Don't try to bring them into light. Don't try to give energy to them. Take energy away from them. And you can do that with the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And Flying Rainbow Lasagna is like a bridge that you can do connecting that being that has energy that's not supposed to have energy. They're supposed to have entropy. They stole that energy from someone through rape or murder. So what you can do with the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, when you see that, when some demon comes up to you and is like, hey, I want to talk to you, give me energy. Be like, no, not only am I not going to give you energy, all of the energy you have is all ill-gotten gains. I'm going to take it away from you. I'm going to repatriate it. Send it back to the people that you stole it from. So you don't keep it for yourself. Because if you kept that energy for yourself, it would be like sandbags weighing you down. It's not what you're actually supposed to have. And then it would be make you kind of like a demon baby. So just like vampires, make their own offspring. They don't physically give birth. They don't gestate it in their body, but they make the primary vampire bites someone else and then turns them into a little baby vampire and raises them up. That's what demons do. So they do that by tormenting people and taking energy away from people, and then those people learn to torment others and take energy away from other people, and then they're like, look, I've got energy, but it's all, like I said, ill-gotten gains. It means that it cannot actually be enjoyed. And really, if you understand that you have your own divine connection, you're literally God. God is not just something inside of you. You're literally God. You don't need to take energy from anybody else. You got all the energy that you possibly could need. You have access to it. If someone took energy away from you, you'd be like, okay, that's fine. I have a never-ending supply of energy. I can make more. It's like being a really good artist. If someone took one of your paintings, you'd be like, well, that's not okay, but I can make more paintings. Give me another canvas, I'll make another painting. So that's what it's like to be, to acknowledge and recognize your own divinity. There's no reason in the world that you would want to siphon energy off of someone else and put it in your own pocket and pretend that it's yours. And also, energy is unique to the individual. It's not like everything is interchangeable. It's like body parts. Like if someone sawed off your arm and then they're like, I'm going to, sew it onto my shoulder. It's like, it's technically your arm, even though it's sewed onto their shoulder. So there's a lot of monsters that are out there and they're kind of cobbled together out of bits from different people that they've stolen. And it's like, no, that doesn't make you into a person. That doesn't make you a viable life form. And it just means that you're, cobbled together like a monster out of, things that you've stolen. So the best thing you can do is take energy away from them. Don't give them energy. Don't converse with them. Definitely don't pity them because they pity themselves. They'll be like, poor me, it's not fair. Sorry for all the traffic noise. These demon sufferers, they'll be like, poor me, it's not fair. I suffer all the time. I can't have love. I don't have a divine connection. I'm not like you. Wah. And just don't pity them. Like they have chosen, they are in the position and context they are because of life choices that they have made. Everybody needs to take responsibility. They didn't just end up there willy-nilly for no reason. If our world were fair, like right now we have people who are homeless, who are beautiful people, who are really valuable and special, and they should not be discarded. They should not be on the streets. But if our world were fair, the people that would be homeless would be the people who have the worst personality characteristics. Like, these interdimensional losers are like homeless in the cosmos. And they're homeless because they're horrible people. They're not supposed, homeless means they don't have bodies. They're not supposed to have bodies. They're not supposed to act through bodies. They're totally, like gross and disgusting. They're not supposed to be in existence. And so the best thing that you can do is take energy away from them. This is cosmic house cleaning. So each day I walk around my neighborhood. I got my beautiful little dog. We go on a nice dog walk. And I, when these occupiers of the interstices, the peanut gallery, they try to harm me or whatever. They try to, intrude intrusive thoughts or, like emotional attacks or any kind of abuse like that. Oh, I send them to entropy. Like while I'm walking around the neighborhood in the beautiful sunshine, I'm trying to say it's something that you can do without even breaking your stride, without even losing any amount of joy or any amount of time. You can just keep on going on with your joyful activity and at the same time, imagine with your magic wand, boom, taking away the energy from that guy and sending it back to the people that they stole it from. And the more, this is spiritual / consciousness-based warfare, but it's also development. I've been keeping on saying we're like giving birth, not like we're in a war. And what we're doing is house cleaning at this point, because now we're able to actually use your magic wand, your imagination, your mind, your reality creation to really affect reality. So if you can really affect reality, you don't have to sit around, being abused by horrible demons. Now you're in the area of the time field where you can do whatever you want and you can do house cleaning. And you can send all of those beings into a state of entropy with whatever you consider, your magic wand or your ring of imagination or whatever empowers you. You have that. That's your inner eye. That's your when people say imagination, sometimes they think it's like thing that is not real. But when I say imagination, I mean your magic wand, your thing that you use to make things happen in life. And it's also the strongest muscle that we have on our body. That with your imagination, you can literally, perform miracles, do things that would be considered totally impossible on the physical level. This is the level of reality that we are moving into. So now we're moving from the mundane into the miraculous. And that is this birth, that we are being birthed from our mother, which is matter. Mother and matter have the same root word. And it's the idea that physical embodiment here and dealing with physical hard-edged objects has been the womb that we have been growing in terms of consciousness. And just like a little baby eventually gets born, comes out into the world, we as consciousness are being born or, from that potential and gestation zone of being stuck in physical matter, like a baby stuck in the womb, to now we are much more expansive. When the baby gets born, at a certain point, it's too big to stay inside of mama anymore. It has to come out. And then when it comes out, all of a sudden it can really stretch out and it can start to learn to crawl and walk around and it can start to explore its environment. That's what our consciousnesses are at this point of doing. So when I said 2017 is like this wild, unlikely year of surreal events, those events are the outer expression of our inner collective transformation. And I see huge, wonderful symptoms of healing in the sense of revealing political corruption and revealing how political corruption is tied to rape, murder, and sexual abuse of children. It's a dark topic. I know when I bring this up, it's like hard for some people, especially really sensitive, emotional, beautiful, good people, to listen to this conversation because it's so truthful. But yeah, the whole reason why we have an economy goes back to ancient Sumeria and these different gods that decided they're not real gods. They decided to set themselves up at the top of a pyramid-shaped hierarchy, and they're going to create the banking system. And they've been controlling humanity, for 5,000 years or more by doing that. And that this is really this time of transformation. And those beings have, exacted a huge toll in terms of the energy that is derived from rape and murder and sexual abuse. Like, I can't even put it into any starker terms, but humanity, you're like a bunch of mammals, and there are literal reptiles eating your babies. And the mammalian imperative or prerogative is to protect the babies. That's different than a reptile. Reptiles have like 10,000 eggs, or they're just gonna like have a huge amount of offspring. They kind of leave them behind. They're like, fend for yourself, do your own thing. I ain't gonna give you food from my body. That is not what reptiles do. And mammals are like, I'm just going to have 1 or 2 kids and I'm going to really, really take care of them. And you're supposed to really take care of and protect your kids and not let reptiles eat them or vaccinate them or any of the things that have been going on, sacrifice them to ancient gods. So yeah, parents need to step up and not allow reptiles to eat your babies. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.